the true essence, in my opinion, of leadership is being a people's person. I think if you can be someone that stands out as a strong, calm, qualified individual that is prepared to step up in all situations, that to me is being a leader. I don't think being a leader is just taking the limelight when things are good. I think you also have to own when things are bad, and that's a part of life as well. So that would be some of the things that I think reflect true leadership.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Joe Fox. Joe is the president of GrowWave, where he's helping unify commerce through tech stack consolidation and smarter retention strategies. With over 15 years of global experience in e-commerce, SaaS, and digital innovation, Joe has worked with major brands including Lego, Sony, and Crocs. Before GrowWave, he led partnerships at Reviews.io and Fast, and founded an award-winning digital agency in Australia. As host of the Retain, Grow, Thrive podcast, Joe brings a grounded yet visionary approach to leadership, focusing on people, process, and product to drive sustainable growth and help brands thrive in the ever-changing world of digital commerce. It's a pleasure for me to have Joe on the podcast today. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, Joe.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for that gracious introduction. I appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. So I always start here with this question. Every leader, of course, has a beginning. I found, of course, who we are as leaders at work and in life starts taking shape long before we ever make it to any executive position or even in the workforce at all. I'm curious, who's someone from your early life or maybe an early experience that really shaped the kind of leader and person that you are today?
Yeah, definitely, Ty. Without sounding too cliche, I'm going to have to go with my father. And the reason being for that is my father had a really, really extensive history in law enforcement. So he was a very, very early police officer. He actually was part of a program in Queensland, Australia, where I'm from, where you're actually able to join fresh out of high school and sort of like towards the end of your high schooling. So he became a police officer fully inducted at 17 years old, and he didn't retire out of the police force until he was past 57. So he spent over 40 years in that career, and he was always a very strong leader. So he very much climbed the ranks incredibly quickly throughout policing, and it was something for me that I just always saw him being a leader, whether it was being a leader in our household, being a leader in the community. He was our school adopter cop, so he was like a leader at my school even, and obviously a leader sort of like through his ranking process and where he got to in his career. So that was always a very big that made a very big impression on me. I was able to pick up a lot of those characteristics at a young age, emulate a lot of those characteristics of good leadership, and carry them through into my career today.
Beautiful. I love that. And I'm curious if you were to expound on that a little bit. Obviously, it sounds like your dad to some extent was, some folks just find themselves consistently in positions of leadership. What do you think it was about your dad, the particular characteristics that you say that you learned from him and that you're carrying forward now?
Absolutely. I think he has a very, very good manner of being able to be approachable, be able to connect with people, be able to relate to people quite quickly on an emotional level. So I believe he possesses a very high level of EQ. He's very smart as well, so IQ as well. But I think that the EQ component really stands out. And I would always see him consistently having conversations, learning from all people from all different walks of life and different cultures. And I think that played a very big part in what I'm very much focused on, which is that, your network is your net worth. I think building relationships with people from all walks of life, all different industries, all different verticals, even, sometimes your competitors, I think having those networks is very, very important. So I would say that was one of the key skills. And being patient, I think, was the other one. I still struggle with this, admittedly. Um, Being in the startup space, everyone wants things to move quicker than they do. But I think he was very, very good at being patient and strategic. So, implementing strategies that he knew would take time to pay off or to pan out the way that he wanted them to. So, I think that's some of the qualities that I hopefully picked up and continue to try and improve upon.
Well, I hear you with that patience one. I can continue to work with that too as an entrepreneur as well. What I'm really hearing in that, really coming through there is relationships with people and relationships with time and process. So I'm curious to hear how, that might weave into our conversation as we move forward. Of course, in this podcast, we're exploring the essence of leadership, what one might call true leadership. Of course, that means different things to different people. What does true leadership mean to you?
I think true leadership means to me a few different things. I think one is that you're never stopping to better yourself. So you never sit there and say as a leader, "Oh, I'm the perfect leader now. I know everything. I'm just going to pause here and continue what I'm doing." I think you, as a leader, you should be consistently learning and striving to do better. We are human, so we are flawed, and no matter how good we think we are, or how often we think that we're doing the right things by people, sometimes as leaders, because we can be so focused on big picture things, we can often, unfortunately do things the wrong way. So I think being reflective is really important as well, and knowing yourself and being able to dive into, understanding why some of the behaviors that you do as a leader. But I think the true essence, in my opinion, of leadership is being a people's person. I kind of spoke about that earlier. I think if you can be someone that stands out as a strong, calm, um, qualified individual that is prepared to step up in all situations, that to me is being a leader. I don't think being a leader is just taking the limelight when things are good. I think you also have to own when things are bad, and that's a part of life as well. So that would be some of the things that I think reflect true leadership.
Yeah, and I really see those personally, those two things as inextricably linked. That the knowing yourself and the capacity to be that people person requires an awareness, right? I like that sort of as within, so without, and so much of what I'm hearing from you there. And I also picked up as the openness and the humility, especially, which it sounds like, for bringing your dad back in here, somebody, for example, that is a leader over a long period of time, which, ideally our lives are long, right? And to experience a success, but not go, "Ah, I've got it."
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think the beauty of life, in my opinion, and the, relating it specifically back to leadership, is that everyone can learn something from someone else. And I think people, unfortunately, sometimes some of the situations that happen today with divisiveness come from people being too rigid and not being open to learning from others and trying to understand others. So I think that's a really important, trait to possess as a human being and as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I that openness, that humility, it's a perfect setup really for my next question because I believe that openness and humility is really necessary, right? To be open and willing to learn from other people. So, of course, every leader faces moments that test and shape them. Would you be willing to share about an experience that really, challenged you and maybe one that was like a turning point in your own true leadership journey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a relatively personal one for me because it reflects very much in my personal life and sort of in my professional life. But my biggest, kind of turning point, I would say, it was over a year ago now, but it was quitting drinking. So quitting alcohol. That for me was a very interesting journey in itself. I think, unfortunately, and this is just, from my analysis and my knowing myself and my personality, and being an Australian as well doesn't always help because it's so heavily ingrained in our culture. But for me, I always grew up with this kind of work hard, play hard kind of mentality. And anything that I put my mind to, I would go 100% into it. So if I have a hobby, I'm 100% into it. If I'm running a startup, I'm 100% into it. If I'm focusing on, how to retain customers better for a business, I'm 100% focused in it. But that also, on a negative level would transfer into partying, drinking, social life, all of those sorts of things. And so for me, it never got to a point, thankfully, where anything dangerous happened or anything, that wasn't fixable happened. But I just got to this point where I was like, this is holding me back from being the best husband, the best family person, the best brother, the best friend, the best son, the best leader, the best boss, the best co-worker. It was holding me back from being the best version of myself in all of those ways. So as a leader who's constantly learning, I know myself quite well, and I just said this has got to go. It's not something that serves me or anyone anymore in the best capacity. So I would say that's the biggest sort of lesson, that I've learnt, and it's had nothing but positive effects in all areas of my life. So
It's such a powerful story, and I'd be curious to hear you say a little bit more about, you hear drinking, right? Letting go of like the partying, but I know of this from my own journey as well, in my way, that it's not just like the letting go of, there's so much else that's wrapped up in that. What do you feel like through that choice was what you were letting go of that helped you step into?
yeah, definitely. I mean, they say there's two kind of forms of addiction from everything of my study, and I don't want to simplify this because we could do a whole podcast about this, but
Surely.
we're with addiction and trauma and escapism and all of those sorts of things. There's typically two things. One is this habitual kind of thing, which wasn't me. It wasn't like I was, waking up in the morning and drinking or sneaking off to the liquor store on my lunch breaks to get alcohol. It was none of that. Mine was more of a escapism tool. So typically it's, people are escaping from trauma, current emotions, current thoughts, current feelings. That's typically the triggers for that. So for me, I really went deep, and I unfortunately had some, and I'm happy to say this because I'm not ashamed of it or anything anymore because I've done quite a lot of therapy. But fortunately, when I was young, I was molested multiple times over a series of years, and it was something that was very traumatic. Obviously, it's something that caused massive amounts of PTSD, depression, etc., throughout periods of my life. And so for me, I found that the alcohol would be a really quick, easy band-aid to escape those thoughts, feelings, and situations of feeling, unworthy or helpless, etc., etc. And so, you know. business and leadership has always given me this amazing feeling of confidence, which is the opposite of that, right? So feeling that I'm in control, feeling that I am worthy, feeling like I'm doing great things for other people and that I deserve good things. But the sometimes also too that would translate to this level of feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed with work. And then, that would sometimes trigger memories of these traumas that had happened to me at a young age. And very severe, not, I certainly won't go into details of it, but just stuff that no kid should have to go through, or no person for that matter. And so when I kind of started to address that, I sort of like, really dug deep with therapy. I did all sorts of things for PTSD, like stellate ganglion blocks, which is really interesting things to dive into. Once again, I don't want to spend the whole sort of conversation on those things, but if anyone in the audience is interested, you should definitely look it up. It's cutting edge therapy that's used with a lot of like special operations veterans and things like that, people who've suffered large amounts of trauma. And that really helped, and the therapy really helped. But I think the biggest thing was coming back to that, knowing myself and sort of understanding, okay, I know this. I know that this is an issue. I know that this is why I'm doing this. This happened a very long time ago. I know that I'm, worthy of love. I know that I'm a good person. I need to shed this from me because it's holding me back. And in turn, the want or the need or the requirement to escape and mask these underlying issues dissipated. So, a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, was the no drinking hard?" It honestly, Ty, it wasn't. It was one of the easiest things I've had to do. But all of the other components and the traumas and things I had to work through were not easy, and that self work and the inner work I had um, to do that were not easy, but they were certainly worth it.
Well, I want to begin by thanking you, Joe, for sharing your story. And, I hope that anybody who, is in a potentially similar situation and hears this can be inspired. I certainly am by your story and your courage to look at that. And I certainly know that regardless, none of us makes it through without traumas, but those ways that we self-medicate serve to cut us off from things that we don't want to feel. And at least in my experience, and part of what I'm hearing is so powerful, and through and with support, is that in by ceasing the behaviors that cut us off from that, we actually get access back to that part of our
Oh,
own life.
yes. Yes. That essence, that vitality, that energy, it almost hits you all at once the cloud of that, or the weight of all of that sheds. It's amazing. Every day is truly a blessing. And I've always felt that way, but I more so feel that way now.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you've already mentioned a little bit here, and to whatever extent that you want to talk about, you had already mentioned a particular kind of therapy that was really helpful. But maybe there's another strand here. Thinking about your journey over the past few years and your own personal healing and your leadership growth, right? Because leadership is so much about what we pour into ourselves, how our willingness to grow, the support that we're open to get. So I'm curious, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself, and an opportunity here to expound on what you've already talked about, or anything else that you feel like has been helpful.
Definitely, definitely. So I'll cover off on a few of the things I mentioned earlier, and then I've got another one that I think is really important, and it's always shaped me, and I think it's important for the audience. But I guess kind of that personal development, personal, mental health kind of investment, um, that was really, really big. And I think today we're so lucky we live in an age of such, forward-thinking medicine and preventative medicine and all of these, incredible opportunities to improve ourselves. So I think pouring into yourself is incredibly important. And I think for me personally, that involved, you know, copious amounts of cognitive behavioral therapy. For me, in my particular case with the trauma, I did things like EMDR, so eye movement desensitization, stellate ganglion blocks, etc., that I kind of mentioned, which is a medical procedure. But all of those things were about, essentially becoming the best version of me mentally and spiritually. So that was a big component of it. And so that would, I would say, is definitely the biggest investment. And the second one that I think is really important, um, is mentorship. I've been so blessed from such a young age, whether it was, starting that relationship with my father, being able to, kind of mentor me from a young age. But I've always sought out mentors. So anything, whether it's, when when I had my agency, for example, I sought out the people who were the best agency people I could get access to in Australia. And I was like, let me buy you lunch. Let me buy you coffee. I harassed them until they would take the time to sit with me. And then I didn't stop from there. I reached out to people in the US, and, obviously I have an Australian accent and I live in the US now in Texas, but I reached out to the best people in the US and said, hey, I'm going to be over there for these dates. I would love to, come to you and meet with you. And so I've always pursued mentors, whether it be in hobbies, in leadership, in business, that I look up to, because I believe you can form a connection that is based on shared experience. And I think it also humanizes the experience. A lot of the time we look up to people and we think, oh my goodness, they probably never even use the restroom. They're that perfect of a person. We put people up on such a pedestal. But when you are face to face with someone having a coffee, it's more relatable. You understand their background, their family life. You understand that we're all just people, and that, makes a lot of what you may see as a challenge ahead of you in any particular endeavor more manageable and more easy to approach.
Well, the way you articulated that just now made me see mentorship in this way of, and I hadn't necessarily put it together this way, but it's like, we can learn knowledge and information. You can go to school, you can sit down, you can learn the particulars of the thing, but it's through relationship with other people that we really see how that learning is embodied. And when we have a mentor, somebody that's been through it before, we get like learning an application isn't as simple as just seeing the thing and doing the thing. It's all of the humanness and the falling down and the navigating all the challenges of it. So that the way that you articulated that now just really brought that out for me.
Oh, thank you, Ty. And, to that point, I just want to stress too is that one other thing that I always recommend, to whether it be, younger people that, my cousins or things like that that are starting their business journey, they're like, what business books should I read, Joe? Like, what business books have you read? Or what startup books have you read? And I'm always like, first of all, there's two types of books I honestly think that you should, start your journey of reading and learning on. And they're more to do with people. And to the point you just made, Ty, I always recommend biographies. I think biographies or autobiographies are the best way to capture shared learning from lessons in time. And we're so lucky that so many people have created them, because we can get lessons all the way back from the, 1600s and apply them today, right up until, cultural icons of today. But then also, I really recommend people to go down the path of, people like Ryan Holiday, who write these amazing books on human behavior and condition and elements of Stoic philosophy and all of these things, and the true stories of great leaders and what they overcame. So those are the books that I steer people towards, because there is a lot of great, I've got a pile of them here, a lot of great business books. But I think if you start there, it accelerates the learning of all the business books a lot more.
Yeah, again, it's that learning through like relativity rather than directive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like
Absolutely.
instead of like here's what to do, it's like here's how this person did it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes all it takes is thinking of things through a different lens of thinking, which is often quite articulated well in conversations or these books or biographies, and being like, oh, and you just have this light bulb moment, and it suddenly makes all the learnings easier.
Agree. Yeah, I love that, boy. Leadership, of course, is so much about what we're shaping for tomorrow. I've been really excited about this question with you in particular, Joe, and curious to hear, your vision for your leadership, your legacy, your work in the world, the impact that you want to have in the years ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a very interesting question, and I think there's a multitude of areas that it can be because I think, we're leaders in our personal lives, we can be leaders in our families, leaders in business, leaders in the community. Ty, have always found that giving back has always been the most satisfying thing for me. I've been sold and exited my business, my agency that I had in Australia. I had all this money. I thought that that would make me happy. And, I've done things like that. I've worked on startups from very, very early stages, grown amazing teams, helped companies exit, all of those sorts of things or get acquired. And all of those things are amazing and they're great. But I think my focus now more is towards being a leader amongst my friendship group and my peer group, being a leader more in my family, and really trying to empower other people. So I think a big thing that's happened with this journey of me with the, really solving my one thing that I needed to, kind of essentially solve. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it was the major thing, is that I really want to help other people recognize what that one thing is in their lives and help them overcome that and be there and give advice. And I know I do a lot of that already. I'm always the friend that gets the calls at, 3 a.m. when something's not going good. I'm luckily also the friend who gets the calls, when there's great news happening in friends' lives. So I really want to focus on doing more of that. But from a career perspective or a business leadership perspective, um, I really want to continue down this path with Grow Wave and see that to a profitable exit or acquisition in the next few years. I have a few other businesses that I've began investing in, which I think hold a lot of promise, and I hold chair positions for those, and I think that may be the direction that I go into, for more of a leadership role in the future. But I think I just honestly want to keep learning. I want to keep leading. I want to keep being around amazing people. I want to keep having conversations with awesome people like you, Ty, and I want to be able to help more. And I think that if we talk about, leadership legacy, uh, my legacy, I hope, is that people would say that I always tried to help them in some way, whether it be big or small.
Well, given the stories that you've shared today and what we've been able to cover in just under half an hour here, really has me thinking about this. It's the challenges and the pain that we face in life that literally becomes the gift that we are able to offer to others through that experience. And really just hear that to some extent, Joe. I'm sure it's already happening, and seeing your continued growth, as you offer what you have learned, right, and in support of others. So, and I'm curious, right, because you mentioned and first of all, also acknowledging that real human part of consistently coming back to the relationship part of it, right? There's
Yes.
yes, there's the business, there's all that stuff, but it's been right here in the conversation with you since the very first question, that people part of it. And there's the execution and the exits. All of that is part of it. But in
Yes.
terms of that, right, true leadership, that evolution for you, of course, we're always growing, we're always evolving. So, and I hear deeply your commitment to that. So what are the ways that you're being stretched or tested in your leadership or life right now? What's the growing edge for you at this moment?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I the areas of I guess focus or areas that I'm trying to improve on or challenges upon I'm seeing is definitely comes back to what we spoke about earlier, Ty, with patience. Patience is very much something I'm learning to kind of work on, and I think the more that I master that, or the more that I learn about that, um, the better almost everything becomes. I think patience is such a underrated skill and virtue, and being able to see things out to completion. I think that's a large part of it. I think from a challenges perspective, it's the same challenges that I think majority of us are facing today in our day-to-day lives. I mean, if we turn on the news, it seems like it's all doom and gloom and no one likes each other. I think there's a lot of fears over AI and what that's going to mean for, people's hierarchy of needs. Is that going to affect, their lives in some sort of way and interrupt their hierarchy of needs, whether that be interrupt their relationships or interrupt their well-being or their need for shelter and food and employment. So I think, there's quite a lot of challenges in those areas. And I think, being patient, being level-headed, trying to understand and be as prepared as possible for those challenges are all things that I think is super important from a leadership perspective at the moment for all leaders, in my opinion.
Well, you are speaking my language, Joe. There, I think about the distinction between being prepared and being ready.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
I
know, and
love that.
we can be prepared for what we know, but we can only be ready for what we don't know.
Absolutely.
And leadership in life is such an unknown that it's not possible to be prepared for everything. But that
Hmm.
readiness, that ability to just be to with whatever challenges arise in the moment, to be able to see clearly and to address. So I really hear that coming through in that answer there. I love that.
I love that. I love that distinction you just made between the two. That was very, very, very well articulated. I'll be writing that down when I rewatch this.
Right on. Uh, well, listen here. This last question is a little bit more of an invitation. If you
Mhm.
have the time in the space here to really offer to our listeners whatever it is that's most in your mind and your heart to share right now, anything at all, take your time. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ty. Once again, thank you so much for having me. This is really, 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 really good format, and I've absolutely loved being a guest on the podcast. Um, I want to offer two things here. One, from a mentorship, perspective. If anyone's watching this, they're a young leader who's up and coming and they're facing any challenges, or they just want a book recommendation, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I really do like to be able to give back. I've gained so much from the mentors in my life. So if I can do that, for more people than I already do now, I'm always happy to do that. And then I think second to that, on a more deeper human level, if anyone is watching this and who has experienced similar situations or things that have happened in their life that they weren't in control of, or they have trauma, or they're facing substance issues, etc., etc. I just want to say too that my LinkedIn inbox is certainly open for that, in a completely non-judgmental way. Coming from someone who's heard and done and seen it all. I really encourage people to reach out and do that. And if you are someone that's struggling with that immensely, very much encourage you to reach out to your loved ones as well, and understand that there is a really, really, really amazing life on the other side of those sometimes dark moments, and that those dark moments are temporary, and you can move past them.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for your contribution here today. I so appreciate the wisdom that you've shared here today with me. I've really gotten so much out of it. I'm really sure that whoever listens is going to equally benefit from what you've shared. And more than that, I trust, Joe, that somebody who needs to hear what you've shared here today going to be listening, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get a message in your inbox there because of the powerful, inspiring message that you've shared today. So thank you so much for being a guest on the True Leadership Podcast.
I thank you so much for having me. Like honestly, this is amazing, and really, really enjoy our conversations, and look forward to having many more in the years to come. So thank you so much for this. I love your podcast. I love what you do. And yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that so much. That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership Approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.